Right. Well, welcome everybody. Sorry for the delay in getting started. My name is Jonathan Teal. I'm a strategic account executive working here at Alteryx. We're here to talk a little bit about Alteryx and SAP and how you can supercharge your supply chain insights with SAP connectors. So today, so I've been with Alteryx for about a year. I was previously with SAP for about 6 years and am very familiar with the overall SAP ecosystem. Today with me, I have my solutions engineer, Nick Smith, who's on the phone, who will be doing part of the presentation, along with Tyler Reynolds and Christoph Schuler from Theobald Software, who are our partners, one of our largest partners, developing connectors for SAP. So what I wanted to do before we get started is to let you know, number one, that there is a chat that's open. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat and we'll address those as we go along. And since we have a relatively small group of people today, we may open it up at the very end for live questions at the very end. But please feel free as we go along to just put your questions in the chat. So before we get started, this is what we're going to do today. I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about what's going on in supply chains in general. So in 2024, we know that there's been tremendous disruption over the last several years with COVID, et cetera, and every company has built their systems and their architectures, their supply chains to deliver to their customers in optimal times. But what we know is true is that there's always volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity that always challenge the system to be able to deliver as expected. So whether that's world tensions, the current Red Sea challenges that are happening with products that used to be able to go through the Red Sea now have to go down around the Horn of Africa. That's a major disruption that's happening today, and disrupting large groups of companies across the globe. So there's also labor shortages and complexities across the board in trying to assemble your products and get them to market on time. And the thing that really sets companies apart is how you turn that resiliency and that adversity into advantage. And what we've seen since the pandemic is those who were fastest to be able to identify the signals, react to them, and recover from them are the ones that are most able to take advantage of that disruption as their competitors lag behind them. So it is with that in mind that we are focused today on how you drive velocity. And so what we've seen is those companies that are least able to adapt uh, typically had higher order to delivery times. They left $1.6 trillion worth of potential revenue growth on the table. And those that were able to take advantage were able to actually deliver 3.6% higher revenue growth as a result of being able to act faster. So what we see as Alteryx is the need for our customers to be able to adapt, get access to data faster in order to activate their supply chain, their supply chains to deliver for their customers, even in the worst of times. And so when we look at the end-to-end supply chain, we're talking about demand sensing on the front end to understand the signals that are happening from the customers on all of the different platforms across the ecosystem, whether it be in-store, online, on social media, et cetera, delivering those products, planning for the raw materials to be able to be pre-positioned with the suppliers so they could be manufactured and moved to distribution centers and ultimately to the customer, and to deliver that on time so that the customer is happy and will buy again. Each customer we have are all looking to move into predictive insights, ensure that they have an integrated demand and supply planning system and process, and really activate their customers so that across all of their different their channels. One of the things that we know is that large organizations have very complex systems. They don't just have necessarily SAP as an ERP. They could have multiple warehouse management systems, a separate PLM system, and multiple different suppliers who need to engage and collaborate across the ecosystem. I mean, there's a large cash investment that currently happens in supply chains, which can be reduced through better, deeper, and faster insights. So when you look at finding potential cash opportunities across the supply chain, there are approximately 8 different areas, from demand sensing, product for portfolio performance, planning, supply, dealing with suppliers. All of these are areas of opportunity today for you to be able to activate um, savings so that you can deliver a more profitable product to the market and delight your customers at the end so that they buy again. So at a very high level, there's lots of opportunities, but where the biggest opportunity is in driving velocity. And so when we talk about driving velocity, it is about connecting the various different elements of your supply chain, whether it be on the customer side with Salesforce, your Salesforce or whatever customer system you have, um, to your SAP data. Alteryx is the glue that sits in the center for those who are not familiar. So Alteryx is that agile system that allows you to have a single landscape to connect different inputs from multiple different systems to prep, blend, augment, add geospatial capabilities so you understand logistically where everything is and how it's moving, and then be able to visualize that in an end system, whether it be Tableau, Looker, or Power BI, or Auto Insights. So today we're going to focus specifically on SAP, SAP systems, and how you connect SAP to Alteryx in order for you to activate a supply chain motion and get rapid insights into what's going on in the business. So when we talked about understanding disruption and getting the demand signals, et cetera, this is what we're going to be talking about: is how do we connect SAP, which is one of the largest ERP systems for many, many large corporations, and connect that data to your value stream so you can get faster insights, so you can get a competitive edge. And so what we are going to do from here is, I've talked a little bit about what's happening trend-wise in the industry, what companies are trying to do with supply chain. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to hand it over to our partners, Theobald Software, so that they can give us some insights into their experience working with SAP and building connectors to support the SAP, to the Alteryx ecosystem, and activate some of their customers. So I'm going to hand it over to Tyler Reynolds from here. Tyler, take it away.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan, for that introduction and kind of segue into the SAP space. And so be glad to talk about the difficulties of working with SAP data, especially in environments outside of SAP, in environments like Alteryx, for example. And we'll do that by talking a little bit about our solutions at Theobald Software, who we are, and maybe just to provide a high-level overview of who Theobald Software is. We have been in the market for close to 20 years and focusing on extracting data from SAP to use in third-party systems. Many leading companies and organizations across the globe use SAP, and mission-critical data is stored or held in the SAP systems. And for those organizations that want to use outside tools such as Alteryx to be able to do data analytics, supply chain management, customer and demand planning, it can be very difficult to be able to access that data in SAP. And that's the problem that we at Theobald Software are trying to solve. Again, we have close to 20 years of experience in that area, focusing on SAP. And we've become very familiar with the different types of SAP systems, objects, and are very aware of the problems that customers have getting access to that data. And you can see a sampling here. Over those 20 years, we have had many customers across industry. Our tools are not specific to certain verticals. We have customers in consumer products, energy, healthcare, you name it. We have customers in those areas who all use SAP, maybe in different fields, but using it for the same purpose, and that is storing all of their business critical data there. And so you can think of what we do at Theobald Software as being a SAP data extractor or data loader. And our goal, our mission is to not only make this SAP data extraction possible, but also make it very intuitive, easy to use, something that can be used by somebody who's not an SAP ABAP programmer or even a developer. Again, like Jonathan mentioned earlier, it's critical to be able to get to your data in a fast manner so that you have the time to not only do your analysis, but also to make decisions and plan actions on that data. So that's one of our main goals, is to make the data not only accessible, but in a very easy to use and fast manner. Another thing that's very important to us is how we go about accessing that SAP data. You can see on this slide here that we are SAP certified for third-party integration. That means the approach that we take for getting to your SAP system, we are going through what's known as the SAP application layer. This is maybe a more technical term, but you can think of this as if you're an SAP user and you're logging into SAP GUI to look up information, our tools use the same approach. This can be very important and critical for your organization because we are not accessing the database directly. That can be very important because users who access the database, there can be some security concerns, SAP licensing concerns. And again, with the goal in mind to make our tools that are easy to use, you're able to use existing SAP user accounts that already have permissions applied, and you're able to use that existing account in order to access the SAP data with the tools that we provide. Which means it can be very easy for you to get started. You don't have to rely on maybe an IT resource for making new SAP users or granting additional permissions. This slide here shows the flexibility of the types of SAP systems that we can connect to. And in a very basic sense, we can connect to any SAP systems that's on the native SAP NetWeaver stack. And that's ERP systems such as ECC or S/4HANA, and the corresponding BW systems, BW for HANA. And SAP also has a variety of industry solutions or modules that sort of live underneath these main ERP platforms, and we're able to connect to any of those. And you can see a sample of those systems on the slide here. And so, again, with what we're trying to do, we're trying to be flexible, secure, and very intuitive, easy to use for our end users. And so in that sense, we're helping, in the context of Alteryx, we're helping the Alteryx user have a truly self-service access into their SAP data so that you can do your analysis and reporting without needing to wait on other resources, IT resources, to make that data available for you. And that is shown very well in this sample use case from our customer, Morton Salt. This is an Alteryx customer using Alteryx Designer and Server, who are using SAP, and at the time there was no easy connector for them to be able to access that SAP data. And so what had to be done is the Alteryx users needed to make requests to their IT teams, ask to make the data available. They needed to let them know what data was required, what types of tables or reports that they needed to utilize within their Alteryx workflows. And then that resource would pull the data as best as they could to match that request and make that available. The problem there is that can be a very manual and time-consuming process. In this case, they were only to pull these data updates once a day, and that would be on the actual work days where the IT resource was in office. So, for example, over the weekend, the analyst didn't really have any access to data of anything that occurred over off time, over a weekend or holiday, for example. And so there were many manual steps. The data, when it did get to the end user, was not always fresh, was not always formatted in the exact way they needed, and so there was still time consumed in order to format that correctly. And then once Morton Salt started using the connector, which Christoph will show you here in a moment, which is called Extract for Alteryx. It's a direct plugin to the Alteryx Designer, and so then it would show up like any other data source and connector in their Designer, in their workflow. So then they were able to do an easy drag and drop with direct access to the data, live access. So when they scheduled these workflows, every time this workflow ran, it was a live pull from SAP data. And so not only was it easier to access the data, but they knew that every time they ran this report, this is live, up-to-date data, and they would be able to have more confidence in the results and decision-making from the results of that workflow. And so I hope that provided a good overview of the Theobald solution, Extract for Alteryx, and how we play and partner with Alteryx. And next, I'll hand it over to my colleague Christoph Schuler, who will actually show this in action, and you can get a sense of how this would work within the Alteryx Designer.
Thank you, Tyler. Let me share my screen here. So I'll give you a brief introduction of our tool Extract for Alteryx. What you see on my screen here is the Alteryx Designer environment. And you see with our plugin Extract for Alteryx installed, you have access to SAP data directly from the Alteryx Designer with several components. There's currently 7 components that we offer in our tool palette. These give you access to different source objects in the SAP system. You can access SAP tables, you can access SAP ABAP reports, You can invoke SQ1, SQ01 queries. ODP is a technology which is relevant for S4 and BW for HANA systems, and so forth. So this gives you really broad access to your SAP instances. And what I want to show you next is a simple example of how you can invoke an SAP ABAP report, for example, here to do some SAP inventory analysis. This is a relatively simple Alteryx workflow. I provide some input data here, basically a plant number, and then I'm running a report from SAP, which shows me all the material movements in and out of that plant. Then I'm going to do some data cleanup. I'm removing some leading spaces, and then I will get to a filtered list of material movements. So when I run this, the report here will give me the SAP data. I'm doing some cleanup here, and here's my resulting inventory report. If you're familiar with SAP, I want to show you how this typically looks to the SAP user. In SAP GUI, you can access all kinds of ABAP reports. Typically, users do so by entering the transaction code or T code directly. In my example that I just showed you for the inventory report, I used a transaction called MB51. That takes me directly to the material documents list report. I can choose a variant here and then execute this report in SAP to see my material documents. Yeah? So I can see for what materials, for the specified materials, for the specified plant, I had material movements in and out of inventory. And that's basically the same idea here in Alteryx. If I show you briefly the configuration here of this component, step one is always the connection to SAP. We want to make sure you have a secure connection to your SAP environment in the context of the user that is authorized to see certain data in SAP, and that user is probably not authorized to see other data in SAP. So that's a very important aspect of how we connect to SAP. As Tyler mentioned, it's at the application layer, and it's always in the context of an actual SAP user. So this step one is very important. You connect to SAP, and you do this in a very similar fashion as you would connect to SAP using SAP GUI. I'll bring it up here side by side so you can see the similarities. Over here in my SAP logon tool, I have different SAP instances configured. You can look at the properties to see, for instance, what application server, or if you use a group server, what am I connecting to? And once you double click on it, you have to authenticate with a client and a username and password. The same thing here in Extract for Alteryx. You specify the SAP host that you want to connect to, or the message server if you want to use load balancing. You specify your username and your password, as well as a client and a logon language. So with your existing SAP user account, you will be able to work with our tool inside of the Alteryx Designer environment to access SAP data that you're already permitted to access. Step two then is to select a specific report. So this is our report component that I dragged and dropped from the toolbar into my workflow designer. Once I click on edit here, I have the ability to specify a report. I can do so by report name or T code. I used MB51 in SAP GUI earlier on to display material documents. So I can search for that T code. It will find the report name. You can also work with variants that you have access to. You can overwrite the variant values with dynamic parameters, for instance, a plant. And you can then simply use this automatic column detection to run the report in SAP. Do have a parameter set here. Okay. Try this again. Okay, looks like something is not working here. That's okay. Once you're done configuring your report, you can then connect the input and output parameters to other Alteryx components to further work with your data. I want to show you a second example because report is just one example of what we can access in SAP in terms of the source objects. Here's another example, a supply chain example, where I'm analyzing purchase order data. Here you can see I have two table components in my workflow. So that's the component here. Same idea here. You first configure your connection to SAP, and then using the edit button, you can specify which tables you want to pull data from. Here I'm accessing two SAP tables EKKO and EKPO. These are the purchase order header and line item tables. We have the ability with our tool to join these tables in SAP, so you can combine the data set from both tables. I can do a live preview here. So I have both fields from the header table as well as the line item table. You have the ability to restrict or filter the data, and you can also have dynamic parameters. Same here, I'm accessing the vendor master table, LFA1. And so here I'm getting additional vendor related information like the vendor name, the location, and maybe the region. Then I'm using standard Alteryx components to join these two data sets. I'm doing then a summarization by vendor. I sort by the purchase order amount, and I can then display the results. Okay, so once I run this workflow, you can see the data extracts in SAP happen in parallel. And if I expand this section a little bit, I have now a data set, a sorted data set by purchase order amount for all of my vendors. There's a third example I want to show you briefly, which utilizes the BAPI component. The interesting thing here is I can not only read data from SAP, but I can also send data back to SAP. So for instance, if you want to use Alteryx to create a purchase order based on a data set, you can do so. I have a simple example here where I specify some input data. So what I need to create a purchase order in SAP is a document date. I need a purchasing org, a group, a vendor, the materials, a quantity, and the delivery date. Then I have to convert a few types to call this BAPI correctly. And once I run it, you can see here I can create a standard purchase order with this number. This was the return from the BAPI in SAP. So you can both read data, but also send data back to SAP if that is required by your scenario. So that was a brief introduction about the capabilities of our Extract for Alteryx product. I want to briefly switch back to this workflow. So you saw me pull purchasing documents, purchase header and line item information, and vendor data. And I've shown you the results here in this browse tool. But you could also take a data set like this and further analyze it, for example, with Alteryx Auto Insights. And that's what Nick will show you here in a moment. So I will stop sharing and turn it over to Nick.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Christoph. And so just because I think, we can all recognize that analysis does not end, within workflows and just the data prep and the automation of this portion here. Just want to show one alternative output reporting that can really be a pretty powerful means of actually displaying results and kind of communicating what is in this data to the stakeholders, the consumers, whoever is really utilizing the information that comes out of these reports. So you just saw a great example of a difficult to work with data source, right, of SAP, the user-friendly kind of intuitive interface of Alteryx, where even a fairly non-technical person can connect to data and prepare it, join it, enrich it, do all those kind of data manipulation steps. Now, how can we keep that same theme going for our reporting, right? The actual kind of visualization or consumption part of this as well. So enter Alteryx Auto Insights, and we can kind of talk about this last mile maybe of the analytics briefly here. So Auto Insights is something that is here to complement or kind of augment your more traditional BI, right? So there's, of course, many dashboarding tools out there that are certainly strong at what they do as far as visual representations and painting a picture with this data. But there's some challenges that we often hear of. There's kind of a cycle of you kind of have to know what questions you're looking to answer before you can really create or kind of establish an effective dashboard, right? And even then you realize there's new questions or new discoveries I want to make, and probably before long you have dashboard madness, right? And now where do I go to find what I'm actually looking for and find that valuable information? So Auto Insights is here to help with that end of things as well. So in this case, we saw how we got some PO data from SAP and did some preparation, but now I want to view some results on this. And maybe me as kind of a BI developer or an analyst, I don't necessarily want to have to iterate and go back and forth with stakeholders of, hey, what would you like to see here? I create a dashboard and then they see some metrics and then new questions arrive, right? I see these metrics, but how did we get here, right? What drove change? What are the important things that I should really be looking at here? So Alteryx Auto Insights is part of the Analytics Cloud, right? So this is going to be a web browser-based cloud application. You can see Auto Insights right here. And this is really kind of your augmented kind of auto dashboarding and really a root cause analysis machine, right? So as I think about these metrics that I was interested in, and I can see that I was interested in what are my total PO order values, what's the quantity, where are these coming from? I see that I have increases and decreases over time, but what's driving those, right? What are those important tidbits of information that I'd like to just float to the top so I can see what's significant really, really quickly? That's where this would land, right? So all it takes from Auto Insights is that data that could come from Designer. It could come from that workflow itself with an automated upload. It could come from a file or even a database connection as well. But what's really, really powerful here is all I have to do is feed it the data, right? All I have to do is say, hey, here's a data set. I've got some metrics that I am interested in here. And this is really the only kind of manual lift portion here. Here's these different columns that existed in that data set. This one I'm doing kind of a time-based analysis, right? Time series. So I want to see trends and important features over time. So I do identify my date here of those PO orders. And then I have those segments as well, which are really kind of the descriptive columns. Now my main measures are kind of metrics, right? How many POs do we have? What's the value of these over time? This is really the only manual lift portion of Auto Insights. Once I give it this information, it's going to take a look at those measures I've identified and really kind of do all of the correlation, kind of the data science type work behind the scenes, along with some generative AI to produce something like this dashboard kind of series of reports here that we saw a moment ago. So we're seeing that just because I've identified, I want that net value over time, I want the PO numbers and the average values of POs, it's gone ahead and created visuals in context for me, right? So I didn't have to establish the visuals. It's created kind of these natural language stories automatically for me just by connecting the dots in the data, really doing that correlation And now I have somewhere I can just view what's significant, right? It's not on the onus of the BI developer to say, hey, here's the exact things I know my executives are going to be interested in. It's going to automatically find what were the key drivers of change, where did significant things happen, and that's what becomes really kind of concise and clear, right, in this kind of auto dashboarding method here. And you can always get a little bit more tailored as well, right? As I scroll through this, again, it's created these visuals and, again, kind of a story that I could look at here. So as I see this, I can't just tell that it's gone up 2% over this last quarter or something similar, but here's the key drivers of change, right? I've seen certain, areas or certain PO order types or regions or different plants here, right? It's showing me where are those significant increases with kind of that story and a visual to go with it. And I can drill deeper if I'd like to, right? So maybe I'm thinking about, hey, this is great as a summary, but I'd also like a really tailored message for my regional, executives or someone who has a really focused area where they just want to see a specific slice of this. I can very well edit these and say, I'd like to filter this down based on certain regions or whatever those criteria are. I can do comparisons against each other. So in this case, I'm looking at like a company code, or maybe I'm interested in how are those different plants performing against each other over time. And as I click into each of these segments, again, visuals, natural language stories, and different ways to view those results with, again, those key kind of important drivers floated to the top really quickly. So this is something where I can go from data to, a full-blown insights kind of dashboard representation within just a couple minutes and a couple clicks, really. And I don't have to be that developer that knows what's that perfect dashboard that I can create, right? Next time when I run that new workflow again with those SAP connections and we get that new data, this would all refresh. So it doesn't matter if there's new data points, if there's new information, if that data changes, I don't have to go reconfigure a dashboard. This is, again, going to kind of recalculate the important drivers and, kind of change agents in there. And those are going to be delivered to me right here again. So that's really kind of this last mile, right? Is all the way from difficult data connections through, kind of the manual prep blend. Now we can also have a very clear and concise visual reporting layer, again, with those key themes of ease of use, speed to insights. Don't require too much of the user to have to know what's the perfect kind of questions to ask here. Let's use the intelligence behind Auto Insights to tell me what those things are. And just to kind of round this out, the visuals are great, right? My end users could come in and view this, drill down, filter, really tailor this view to what's important to them. I can also have this just emailed to certain people, maybe every Monday morning. I want them to get a weekly or a monthly update. Hey, here's how your different regions performed, and here's kind of the key drivers of change and things, right? That could be a zero-touch process to deliver emails and things on whatever cadence that is. But the other thing you can do here would be to actually create what we call our magic documents. So once I've created this mission, which is what we call kind of these series of metrics that we've produced, I can have this delivered in some kind of, kind of report format or messaging as well. So again, kind of incorporating that theory of, low touch, use generative AI where it's available and helpful. So I can really, really quickly say I'd like to produce some kind of new output with this information it's created, something like an email, right, where I can say I have a certain kind of audience, so it'll cater its tone to a certain output or a certain persona. And then I have some levers I can pull on, what's kind of the objective that I should try to make some suggestions toward and things here. So really quickly, just by generating an email and saying, hey, this is to maybe a VP of supply chain or otherwise, right, it's taken the content from those reports and given me an email that, I can share or even at least use as a template, right, for something that I do want to distribute to others. So it's gone through and kind of summarized. These are the changes that we've seen, right, over these times. Here's kind of the key things that you might want to look at. Here's some suggestions and recommendations even. Here's those key drivers, and here's an increase or a decrease that maybe we can act on. And then, of course, it does link back to the actual full visualization there as well. So your consumers who see that can jump right into kind of the interactive layer of Auto Insights and shape that data how they'd like to see it. Similar for even things like PowerPoint. right? So instead of having to take these snippets and copy and paste and produce some kind of deliverable, it can actually generate that for you here as well. So if you do download this, also something you can tweak and edit, but just another place where that ease of use and speed, right, can really kind of at least create that first mile for you, and you can hone it as you need to after the fact here. And so that's kind of where Auto Insights fits, right? Is really kind of the end of this data pipeline, right? Where I can start to not just create dashboards, but have, again, the intelligence behind the scenes really tell me what's important and let me discover that things really, really quickly versus having me have to be that domain expert that knows exactly how to cater this dashboard to the audience here. So hopefully that helps kind of paint this end-to-end picture, again, all the way through data connectivity, and in this case, SAP with those robust but easy to use connectors, all the way through having some deliverable, right, to our audience here with Auto Insights. And so with that, we encourage you to poke around or ask any questions that you'd like to. Plenty of information out there, but we can always happily dive in further on any of the above. But I'll hand it back to you, Jonathan, for anything like to round out the session here.
Excellent. So so far what we've shown is kind of like an overall view on how you can speed up your access to SAP data. So being able to essentially use your credentials and everything that's managed inside of SAP and break down the walls between, essentially the extracts that you're probably doing with SAP and essentially activating your analysts to be able to connect to the SAP data so that they can speed up that process. And what we see is when you look at trying to drive velocity, the faster you get access to the data you need, it's usually the analyst in tandem with the business user who understands what they need. And it's that back and forth that can be the challenge, is getting the correct extract. With the Theobald connectors, you have the ability to connect to SAP, grab the data, prep, blend, augment, analyze, add geospatial layers or any of the other elements to it in order for you to output it to a solution like Auto Insights that can rapidly provide you with insights to what's happening in the data and what's happening across your ecosystem, especially your supply chain. So at the end of the day, we're talking about driving velocity. Hopefully today's session has been helpful to you. I'm sure you have lots of questions, and feel free to reach out to your sales rep for any questions about how do I get access to these connectors? Can I try them? Can I set up a trial? Please work with your sales rep directly in order to get any answers with that. If you have any technical questions, do the same. So please filter them through your sales rep. We're here to help, and I want to thank our partners, Theobald Software, Tyler, Christoph, Nick. Thank you so much for taking time today to go through this end-to-end for supply chain. I think it's been really helpful to see how it all works end-to-end. And do you have any last thoughts before we go?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan, from our side, of course, for hosting us. And as Jonathan mentioned, with our partnership with Alteryx, feel free to approach your Alteryx sales rep directly if you want to try the software, if you have any questions, and we'll make sure we'll get back to you.